What if the bottle sitting in your fridge is cleaner on the label than it is in real life? What if the water you trust most is little more than processed tap, dressed up in words like pure, natural, and healthy? If you want more videos that save you from expensive mistakes, hit like, subscribe for clear truth without the fluff, and share this with the one person in your life who thinks every bottle of water is basically the same. Most people never question bottled water. They question soda, they question energy drinks, they question fast food. But water? Water feels innocent. It feels safe before you even open the cap. That is exactly why this market is so powerful. It sells peace of mind. It sells convenience. It sells the idea that if the bottle looks clean, the water must be clean too. But once you slow down and look closer, the picture gets ugly fast. Some brands are not really selling a better source of water at all. They are selling branding, mood, and chemistry tricks. Some hide behind words like vapor distilled, electrolyte enhanced, or pH balanced, hoping you never stop long enough to ask the obvious question. Better than what? And better for who? And then there are the bigger red flags. Recalls, contamination concerns, legal fights over water sources, questions about arsenic, microplastics, metals, and misleading marketing. And no, this does not mean every bottle is poison. It means something more frustrating. It means the bottled water aisle is built on trust, but too many brands have not earned that trust. So today, we are doing something simple. We are separating image from reality. We are going through 13 bottled waters that raise the biggest concerns, and then we will end with 5 that stand out for the right reasons. Not because they have the flashiest labels, not because celebrities hold them in staged photos, but because they make a stronger case for quality, consistency, and transparency. And before we get into the brands, there's one thing you need to keep in mind the whole time. The most dangerous trick in the water business is not always contamination. Sometimes it is confusion. If a company can make you believe processed municipal water is premium mountain purity, it has already won. That is a good place to start, because one of the clearest examples is Lifewtr. Lifewtr looks smart. It looks artistic. It looks modern. It looks like the kind of bottle a thoughtful person grabs on the way to a workout or a meeting. And that is the point. It is not really selling hydration first. It is selling identity. The label is part gallery, part lifestyle ad, part quiet flex. But beneath that clean design is a much less romantic story. Lifewtr is purified water with added electrolytes for taste. That sounds impressive until you translate it into plain English. In simple terms, the brand is taking water, processing it, then adjusting the taste profile and charging you like it came from somewhere rare. The promise feels elevated. The reality feels manufactured. And once you see that pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. Dasani plays a similar game, just with a more infamous reputation. For years, people have argued about the taste. Some call it dry. Some say it tastes strange. Some say it tastes like the bottle more than the water. Taste is personal, sure, but the larger issue is why this taste profile exists in the first place. When water is heavily purified and then minerals are added back in a controlled way, you are not drinking nature. You are drinking a product designed to feel consistent at scale. That may work for a soft drink. It is a lot less comforting when the product is supposed to represent purity. Aquafina belongs in the same conversation. Another giant brand, another polished image, another case where the average buyer often assumes the water must come from somewhere distant and pristine. But the real story is far less magical. It is processed water sold through the power of trust, familiarity, and distribution. That matters because the price difference between bottled water and what comes out of many safe household taps is not just about hydration. It is often about marketing winning a psychological battle. Then we get to Smartwater, which may be one of the most successful examples of this entire category. Even the name nudges your brain. Smartwater. As if choosing it says something about you. As if you are making the informed choice, the upgraded choice, the choice above ordinary people, reaching for ordinary bottles. But most of that story lives in the branding. Vapor distillation sounds futuristic. Electrolytes sound athletic. The bottle looks sleek and serious. Yet, at the end of the day, the basic question remains. Are you paying for a genuinely superior source? Or are you paying for a cleaner sounding process and a more flattering label? Core Hydration also deserves attention for how aggressively it sells balance. It leans on the language of perfect pH, smooth taste, and body harmony. The marketing almost makes it sound like the water understands your biology better than you do. But once again, the problem is the leap from technical language to meaningful benefit. A number on a bottle is not a miracle. A sleek explanation is not proof that the water does something special inside your body. When the science gets simplified into slogans, buyers usually lose. And that brings us to Essentia, one of the boldest brands in the alkaline water world. This is where bottled water stops quietly implying health benefits and starts saying them out loud. Supercharged hydration, better performance, better recovery, higher pH, more than water. That kind of messaging is powerful because people want an easy health upgrade. It feels easier to buy a better bottle than to build better habits. But high pH alone does not turn a brand into liquid gold. Your body already works hard to regulate itself. Fancy wording can make ordinary claims sound revolutionary. Penta takes the purity pitch in a different direction. Instead of telling you the water is enhanced, it tells you it is stripped down. Ultra purified. Multi-step filtration. Nothing extra. At first, that sounds like the safest idea in the world. But there is a strange twist here. Water that is marketed as almost empty can sound healthy because people associate less with cleaner. Yet natural water is not supposed to be laboratory blank. Trace minerals are part of what makes spring and mineral waters appealing in the first place. When a company turns absence into a luxury feature, you should at least ask whether the story is deeper than the slogan. Now, none of these first brands feel scary in the horror movie sense. They feel disappointing. They feel like the industry taking your trust and stretching it until it almost snaps. But the next group is where things get more serious, because now we move from expensive image to actual controversy. Arrowhead has long traded on the romance of mountain springs. That image is hard to resist. Cold, wild, untouched, natural. But the problem is that once a brand builds itself around the purity of place, every question about permits, sourcing, and consistency hits harder. People are not just buying water, they're buying a story about land. And when that story gets tangled in disputes over access, extraction, and what exactly consumers are receiving, the brand stops feeling refreshing and starts feeling opportunistic. Poland Spring has faced a different kind of trust problem. For many buyers, the name itself sounds like a guarantee. It sounds old, simple, and dependable. But critics and lawsuits over the years have pushed a difficult question into the spotlight. When a brand says spring water, how closely does the real sourcing story match what the average customer imagines? That gap between label language and buyer belief is where bottled water companies make enormous money. If the product is technically within the rules, but still leaves ordinary people feeling misled, the damage to trust is real. Nestlé Pure Life has carried another shadow altogether. Microplastics and the wider problem of what modern bottling does to something that is supposed to feel clean. This is where the conversation gets bigger than one company. Because once microplastics enter the picture, people begin to realize the bottle itself can become part of the story. Not just the source, not just the processing, the container too. Suddenly the question is not only where the water came from, it is also what it picked up on the way to your mouth. And that changes how you look at everything. Because the bottled water market loves to act like purity is simple. It is not simple. Source matters, treatment matters, storage matters, plastic matters, heat matters, time matters, transportation matters, oversight matters. A beautiful label tells you almost none of that. Quick checkpoint. If this breakdown is helping you see the water aisle with new eyes, give this video a like, subscribe, so you do not miss the next one, and share it with your family before the next grocery run turns into another blind guess. Now let's talk about a brand that shook a lot of people because it came from a place many shoppers automatically trust. Starkey, sold through Whole Foods, hit a nerve because of reported arsenic concerns in testing years ago. And that is exactly why this case matters so much. People often pay more at stores they associate with wellness because they believe the screening must be stricter. They believe someone already did the worrying for them. So when a premium, health-focused retail environment is tied to a product that raises questions about something as serious as arsenic, the emotional impact is bigger than the lab result alone. It breaks the feeling of safety. That is the hidden theme running through this whole list. We are not just talking about chemistry. We are talking about broken expectation. If a gas station candy bar disappoints you, that is one thing. If a bottle of water disappoints you, it feels personal. Water is the last thing people expect to negotiate with. Fiji is another brand that shows how strong image can survive, even when confidence takes hits. Few bottled waters have a more powerful visual identity. The square bottle, the tropical branding, the idea that this is water from far away, protected from the mess of ordinary life. It feels exotic and pure before it ever touches your lips. But that image has been tested by recalls and contamination concerns, including bacteria and manganese issues that forced people to ask an uncomfortable question. If a premium bottle built on distance and purity can still end up in a recall story, what exactly are people paying premium prices for? That is what makes bottled water such a fascinating business. The product is basic, the psychology is not. Buyers are not only paying for hydration, they are paying to escape uncertainty. They want the bottle to remove doubt. But once a recall happens, the entire premium illusion cracks. Suddenly the expensive choice does not look safer than the basic one. It looks more embarrassing. And then there is Propel, which barely even pretends to stay in the same lane as plain water. This is where the category starts blurring into flavored functional beverage territory. Added ingredients, sweeteners, preservatives, sodium, claims tied to fitness and performance. At some point, the label may still say water, the product starts behaving more like a formula. That matters because many people pick these bottles while thinking they are making the cleanest possible choice. In reality, they may be buying something far more processed than they realize. Here's the larger truth that companies hope you never say out loud. The more a water brand has to explain itself, the less natural it usually feels. Real confidence looks simple. Complicated branding language often appears when a company needs to decorate a basic product with a bigger promise. And now we reach one of the most interesting tensions in this whole story: alkaline water. Alkaline branding works because it sounds scientific and advanced without being hard to understand. Most people hear higher pH and immediately assume higher quality. It sounds cleaner. It sounds more refined. It sounds like a hidden advantage smart people discovered early. That is why brands like Essentia and Core built so much attention around the idea. But the body is not a passive bottle waiting for a better number. It is an active system. The promise that a trendy pH level changes everything is usually much bigger than the evidence many shoppers imagine. That does not mean every alkaline bottle is dangerous. It means the marketing often moves faster than common sense. If a brand is asking you to believe that hydration suddenly became a breakthrough product because a label says 9.5 instead of 7, you should slow down. Water can be useful, refreshing, and fine to drink without becoming a superhero. The same goes for electrolyte-enhanced bottles. There is nothing magical about taking heavily processed water, adding a few minerals for taste, and presenting it like a performance tool. For elite endurance athletes in very specific situations, hydration strategy matters. But for the average person walking into a store after work, many of these claims are less about need and more about identity. The bottle says athlete. The marketing says optimized. The reality is usually far less dramatic. This is why brands like Lifewtr, Smartwater, Dasani, Aquafina, and Core deserve to be viewed with healthy skepticism. Not necessarily because each bottle represents instant danger, but because the value story is so inflated. The package suggests more than the product can honestly deliver. Then you have the brands that make people uneasy for a deeper reason. They call attention to contamination or sourcing questions that should never feel vague in the first place. Arrowhead, Poland Spring, Starkey, Pure Life, Fiji. Those names trigger stronger concern because once the conversation touches arsenic, recall history, microplastics, metals, or disputed sourcing narratives, people stop hearing lifestyle language and start hearing risk. And that is where the whole bottled water market splits in two. On one side, you have brands that seem overpriced for what they are. On the other side, you have brands that feel harder to trust because too much smoke has built up around them. Neither side is where most people think they are standing when they grab a bottle in a hurry. So what should you actually look for? Start with transparency. Where's the water from? Is the source described clearly, or does the label hide behind vague language? Next, look at how hard the brand is selling a miracle. Usually, the louder the promise, the weaker the substance. Then look at packaging. If two bottles claim purity, but one reduces the chance of plastic exposure through glass or aluminum, that matters. And finally, look at history. A perfect ad campaign means nothing if the brand keeps appearing in the wrong kind of news. There is also a simple gut check that works better than most people think. If the front of the bottle sounds like an ad and the real explanation is buried in tiny print, slow down. If the source is unclear, slow down. If the brand keeps repeating the same magic words without explaining what they actually mean, slow down. Bottled water should not feel like you're buying a secret formula. It should feel like you're buying clean water from a source that can stand up to questions. And remember, the best choice for one person is not always the best choice for every situation. Some people care most about taste. Some care most about avoiding plastic. Some want sparkling water instead of still. Some just want the cleanest story for the money. That is fine. You do not need the perfect bottle. You need a bottle that is honest about what it is, reasonable in what it claims, and boring in the best possible way when you look into its history. That brings us to the 5 bottles that make a stronger case for trust. Not because they are perfect, not because any bottle should be worshipped, but because compared with the rest of the aisle, they offer a more believable story. Evian is a good place to begin. It has been around so long that some people overlook it. They see it everywhere and assume it is just another famous brand writing old prestige. But part of the reason Evian has held its place for so many years is that its identity is not built on fake futuristic language. It is built on source and consistency. Natural mineral water from the French Alps is a story people can understand. It does not need a costume. It does not need to pretend it hacked hydration. It just needs to be what it says it is. That simplicity matters more than people think. In a market full of performance talk and laboratory-sounding upgrades, there is real strength in a bottle that mainly says, here is the water, here is where it comes from, and here is what is naturally in it. Icelandic Glacial is another brand that stands out because it leans into origin rather than gimmick. The appeal here is not that it looks elite. It is that the story feels coherent, a clean source, a stable identity. A taste profile many people describe as smooth and soft rather than heavily processed. Even the higher natural alkalinity feels different when it comes as part of the source rather than as a dramatic marketing trick. San Pellegrino also earns a place, though for a different reason. It is not trying to be invisible water. It is distinct. Sparkling, mineral-rich, slightly celebratory. That actually helps its case because the product is not pretending to be something it is not. If you buy it, you know you're buying a specific taste experience. The brand is not trying to pass off engineered blandness as mystical purity. It has a character of its own, and that honesty goes a long way. If this list has already changed what you reach for at the store, back the channel with a like, subscribe for more deep but easy to follow breakdowns. And share this video so one more household stops paying premium prices for polished disappointment. Proud source is interesting because the water is only part of the story. The packaging matters too. In a market where plastic raises more and more questions, aluminum stands out immediately. It sends a signal that the company is thinking beyond just a pretty label. It also changes how the whole bottle feels in your hand. More solid, more deliberate, more like a product designed around the full trust equation, not just the liquid inside it. And then there is Mountain Valley Spring Water, which for many people feels like one of the clearest examples of what bottled water should be when it asks for a premium price, real spring identity, long reputation, glass bottle options. A taste profile people often describe as clean without feeling stripped empty. It does not need to shout. It does not need to disguise itself with fitness language. It feels like water that understands its job. Notice something important about all 5 safer picks. None of them depend on trying to make you feel smarter than other shoppers. None of them need to invent a dramatic new version of hydration. None of them hinge on turning plain water into a biohacking fantasy. Their strength is that they sound more grounded, more stable, more believable. That does not mean price suddenly stops mattering. It absolutely matters. Bottled water is still one of the easiest categories in the world for companies to mark up because the emotional pitch is so effective. People will overpay for reassurance every single day. But if you are going to buy bottled water anyway, the smartest move is not to chase the most dramatic label. It is to look for the most honest one. Now let's pull the whole picture together. The weak side of this market is not just contamination, it is theater. Theater in the name, theater in the bottle shape, theater in the words purified, balanced, enhanced, smart, ultra, and premium. Theater in the way ordinary municipal water gets dressed up like a luxury experience. Theater in the way fitness language can make a processed drink sound cleaner than it is. Theater in the way a tropical image or mountain scene can make your brain stop asking questions. And that theater works because most people are busy. They do not have time to study sourcing reports. They do not have time to compare treatment methods on a lunch break. So they trust whatever feels safest in a 2-second glance. That is why a video like this matters. Not because it turns shopping into fear, but because it turns blind trust into informed caution. You do not need to panic over every bottle you have ever bought. You do not need to act like one bad purchase doomed your health. What you do need is a better filter, a mental one. You need to stop treating bottled water like a category where all brands deserve equal benefit of the doubt, because they do not. Some are mostly expensive branding exercises. Some have pushed claims that sound bigger than the evidence. Some have been wrapped in controversy serious enough to make any careful buyer pause. And if you have done a better job earning trust through simpler sourcing stories, more stable reputations, and packaging choices. So if we step back and rank the 13 problem bottles by the kind of concern they raise, the pattern becomes clear. Lifewtr, Dasani, Aquafina, Smartwater, Core Hydration, Essentia, and Penta belong to the world of inflated promise. Different language, same basic move. Turn water into a lifestyle product and charge more for the performance. Arrowhead, Poland Spring, Pure Life, Starkey, Fiji, and Propel hit a different nerve. They trigger concern because the conversation around them gets closer to the stuff shoppers fear most. Contamination, recalls, microplastics, metals, or disputed sourcing narratives. And the 5 safer names that stand taller in comparison are Evian, Icelandic Glacial, San Pellegrino, Proud Source, and Mountain Valley. Again, not perfect, not magical, just easier to defend. That distinction matters because fear sells almost as easily as luxury does. It would be easy to end this by saying every bottle is a disaster and the entire aisle is a scam. That would sound dramatic, but it would not be honest. The more honest ending is this. Bottled water is a trust business, and too many brands spend more energy managing perception than earning confidence. Once you understand that, you stop shopping with your eyes alone. You stop falling for design language that mimics health. You stop confusing added minerals with natural quality. You stop hearing the word premium and assuming it means protected. And maybe most important of all, you stop assuming water is simple just because it is clear. That is the real lesson here. Clear does not always mean clean. Natural sounding does not always mean naturally sourced. Enhanced does not always mean better, and expensive does not always mean safe. The best bottled water is usually the one that needs the fewest excuses. The one that tells a simple story and survives hard questions. The one that does not need to distract you with celebrity shine. Pseudoscience, or a bottle designed like a fashion accessory. Because in the end, water should do one humble thing well. It should hydrate you without making you wonder what game was played before it reached your hand. So the next time you stand in front of that glowing wall of bottles, do not ask which label looks the healthiest. Ask which brand has done the least to manipulate your trust. That question alone will save you money, save you from hype, and maybe save you from turning marketing into part of your daily diet. And once you start seeing the bottled water aisle that way, you will never walk past it the same way again.